Yo, what's up YouTube? Goody Graham back here with another one. And since today is the day, I've already let you guys know I'm going to be pushing the Rogue on the seasonal realm, and I've given you guys my reasoning as to why the Rogue is the best class in the game for Season 1. So following that, here's an updated leveling build guide. Real quick, before we dive right in, I just want to mention if you guys are interested in my videos on the best class for Season 1 or my other build guides, feel free to check out the description as I'll have everything linked there. Now this build is legitimately pretty much the exact same thing I showcased you guys in my last build guide, an insanely powerful and fun burst damage melee rogue with tons of survivability and mobility, but this is simply due to the fact that, like I predicted, there weren't any massive nerfs or changes to the rogue class, nor the way it works as a whole. That is, besides the nerf to siphoning strikes requiring you to first lucky hit in order to proc, this essentially just reduced the survivability a bit, but not as much as the overall armor and damage reduction nerfs issued to all classes. However, I've since refined not only my Paragon board and my skills, but my aspects and my affix rolls on my gear, so there are a few things new I want to show you guys now that I'm happy with where I'm at. Getting it started off here, I want to just talk about the aspects real quick, because there's really only going to be one that we need to focus on specifically. That's going to be the Blade Dancer's aspect. The build really only needs this one aspect to come online, like I mentioned in my previous video, and also like I stated, since it's easy to get early on in your progression, you want to go ahead and pick it up as early as possible, considering this is one of the core aspects that make up the concept of the build. All you'll have to do in order to get this aspect is just create yourself a character, and presuming you've played the preseason and beat the campaign, you'll skip the campaign, and once you do so, you'll be able to start progressing towards unlocking it from the dungeon in Skosglen. Apart from that, the only other aspect I would recommend you watch out for and try to get your hands on immediately would be Bursting Venoms, as it's the aspect that grants infinite poison and is the key aspect when running the infinite poison twisting blades build. Moving on to the skills here though, like I said, this is all going to be the same stuff you've probably already seen. For obvious reasons, I'm picking up Puncture, as it gives me not only energy regeneration, but a slow proc. Now I would immediately get this spec'd up to Fundamental Puncture, as this will give you an infinite source of Vulnerable, which is one of the most crucial multiplicative status effects in the game for any build. Now when it comes to the core, it's self-explanatory. We're going to be picking up Twisting Blades, going into Advanced Twisting Blades. I would try to get this maxed out at 5 out of 5 early on. I'll probably be attributing a point to it every other level until I get it maxed out. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, I used Improved Twisting Blades for the Daze effect. However, if you remember, I told you guys this was because I pushed not only single target damage, but also high nightmares. But in regards to specifically leveling in the early game, I think Advanced Twisting Blades is the clear choice, as the cooldown reduction is massive when you don't have any other access to it from other sources. Just below that though, we have our passives. Now you'll remember, before I was picking up Siphoning Strikes for life regen, however since it's been nerfed and you don't have any sources of lucky hit in the early game, I opted out and decided to just pick up Sturdy 3 out of 3, which will give me 12% damage reduction, and since they just nerfed all defensive stats, this is more important than ever. I would pick up 1 point of this out of the gate and then max it out later on once you got the more crucial things. To the right of that, I recommend picking up Stutter Step, as this will give you a bit more movement speed, and considering the whole goal here is efficiency and speed, this is a must-have early game. Moving on to our agility skills, we have Shadow Step. Now as I mentioned in my previous guide, you'll want Shadow Step as it's an insanely overpowered movement skill, but it's also a CC break, which is massively important at all stages of progression, especially if you're a hardcore player. I recommend speccing in a disciplined Shadow Step, as this will reduce Shadow Step's cooldown, allowing you to use it more often, meaning more escapes and faster traversal. But like I said, in early game, your sources of cooldown reduction are scarce, so we definitely don't want to miss out on picking this up. Eventually, that is, I just wouldn't prioritize it immediately. You'll also want Dash in order to give yourself the maximum mobility benefit. This is just a must-have, especially if you're trying to be as efficient as possible. We can't forget right here though, Weapon Mastery, big damage increase here all around no matter what you're running, so don't forget to pick this up early on. With our Subterfuge skills at this point, after all the defensive survivability nerfs, I'm having my hand forced on recommending you pick up Dark Shroud. I've said it before, but if you absolutely want to trade out Dark Shroud for Shadow Clone, you can. However, at this point, the extra damage and CC break it provides just isn't comparable when put up against the full benefits of Dark Shroud, especially when speccing into Subverting Dark Shroud for the extra movement speed. This is once again for efficiency and clear speed, as that's all we really are worried about going into Season 1. I clearly have it maxed out at 5 out of 5, however, I recommend picking up 1 point at first, and once everything is maxed out, I would distribute your last couple of points into rounding it out. Below that, we have two really important passives, Exploit and Malice. These are no-brainer pickups for everyone, extra damage to healthy and injured, as well as vulnerable enemies. Outright damage multipliers like this are going to be good when paired with this build. I recommend getting at least Malice maxed out as early as possible. We will also want to pick up the Precision Imbuement passive for extra critical strike chance. As early game, you really are struggling with critical strike chance and lucky hit, so anywhere you can pick it up is going to be worthwhile. Of course, this being the infinite poison build, we're going to be running poison imbuement. I'd get this 5 out of 5 as soon as possible. In my opinion, it's the best out of the imbuement skills because not only can it handle AoE, but it's also got some of the best single target damage I've seen in the game. The reason we cannot worry about AoE skipping out on Shadow Imbuement is due to the fact that we're running the Blade Dancers aspect as we mentioned previously. This allows us to poison imbue and then apply the imbuement to multiple enemies once the blades circle around us because they're poisoned. We'll want to spec into blended poison imbuement as this will increase our poison damage. Same reason we pick up deadly venom just below that. And to the right we have debilitating toxins for some damage reduction against poison enemies. Once again, really important passive here considering the recent nerf to all the damage reduction outright. Just below that we have alchemical advantage. This is going to give us an increased attack speed, which in turn should give us a bit more efficiency. Then we have Innervation, which gives us a bit of energy restore. However, what we mainly want is Alchemist Fortune. This will give us a big boost to lucky hit chance, and this is crucial to proccing several effects that we'll have, as well as being massive for aiding the proc of Bursting Venoms once you acquire and put that into use on your build. This will also help if you want to redistribute some points, going back picking up Siphoning Strikes. But finally, rounding out our skills here, we have our key passive, which is still Momentum, and this will grant us damage reduction, energy regen, and movement speed whenever procced, which it will be infinitely. There's one more thing here I want to show you guys real quick though, and that's going to be my updated spreadsheet for all the affixes you want to be looking for on your gear, and so I'll go ahead and explain that a little bit here. Looking at your helm here, you're going to want to go ahead and pick up total armor, max life, 2 to 4 ranks of your imbuement skill, cooldown reduction, and then if you have to, dexterity or maximum energy. When it comes to your chest, once again, you're going to want to be looking for total armor, max life, damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction from poison enemies, damage reduction from distant enemies, and then if you have to pick up one, dexterity or poison. When looking at our gloves, we want to pick up 2 to 4 ranks of our core skill, lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, and then attack speed. You can pick up critical strike damage with imbued skills if you have to though. For your pants, some of you might want to pick up something like Temerity. However, I've gotten a lot more use and value out of something like a regular pair of pants that have total armor, max life, damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction from poison enemies, damage reduction from distant enemies, and then if you have to fill a slot, go ahead and pick up imbuement skill cooldown or 2 to 4 ranks of Dark Shroud. With our boots, we just want to be looking for movement speed, energy cost reduction, damage reduction while injured, dodge chance, or if you need them, 2 to 4 ranks of dash or 2 to 4 ranks of shadow step. On our crossbow, we want to look for dexterity, core skill damage, vulnerable damage, critical strike damage with imbued skills, or damage to close enemies. Your blades are going to be universal. You're going to want to pick up dexterity, vulnerable damage, core skill damage, critical strike damage to close enemies, or critical damage with imbued skills. With your amulet, you have quite a few options here, and it depends upon what you want to do with your build specifically and what content you're pushing. If you're going for more of a tanky rogue and you want to push high nightmare tiers, you're going to want to pick up total armor, damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction from poison enemies, damage reduction from distant enemies, or max life. In regards to having a more of a damage spec build, you're going to want to pick up 1 to 3 ranks of deadly venom, 1 to 3 ranks of all imbuement skills, 1 to 3 ranks of the malice or exploit passives, cooldown reduction, dexterity, movement speed, energy cost reduction, or if you need to, pick up some damage reduction while injured. Once again, your rings are going to be universal. You're going to want to be looking for max life, vulnerable damage, lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, damage with imbued skills, poison damage, damage to close enemies, damage over time, or critical strike damage with imbued skills. And then we can see we have the stat fillers, which is just if you can't roll a stat that you're looking for on any of your gear, look for one of these stats as a filler until you can get a god roll item. Dexterity, all stats, damage, physical damage, poison damage, cutthroat skill damage, imbued skill damage, dodge chance, damage to poison enemies, damage over time, and then damage reduction while injured. A lot going on here, tons of synergies and multipliers working in our favor. I've pushed the build to max potential on single target damage while still having amazing AoE in order to compensate for all the bosses and hordes we'll be clearing. This is my build though, and what I'm going to be running for the launch. So let me know what you think about the new season and what your plans are. I know there's a lot of skepticism in the community right now, and to be honest, I agree for the most part. However, that's it for this one, guys, and if it helped you decide on how to spec out your build, and you want to stay updated with guides like these, strategies, and everything Diablo 4, don't forget to subscribe. If you enjoyed, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, and drop any questions or feedback you might have down in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and peace out.